Hello, I am Jane Miller. On behalf of the Texas Family Enrichment, we welcome you from across the United States and countries around the world. We are happy to have you attend this webinar for the second lecture of our Parenting with Purpose series entitled Because I Want to, Forming the Will of Your Children. As our name indicates, we organize family enrichment courses every year, but due to the pandemic, we had to cancel them and present these lectures instead. These in no way replace our courses, but they supplement them. As many of you know, family enrichment courses use the case study method. It has been proven to be one of the best methods for adults to learn. So we encourage you to sign up for a family enrichment course in the future, in the city or country where you live. That being said, these lectures in the midst of a pandemic are a great way to continue our formation as parents and grandparents. This lecture will be given by Pilar Caranti from Houston, Texas. Pilar holds a master's degree in psychology from the Catholic University of Argentina. She is a certified professional life coach and loves working with mothers and couples. Family topics and the education of children are her passion. You can learn more about Pilar and her private practice by visiting her website at pilarcarante.com. Pilar has been a member of the board of Texas Family Enrichment since 2015. She is a moderator and has facilitated cases in many cities. She and her husband, Guido, are founders of Family Summer, a vacation for families in Beaver Creek, Colorado, that also started in 2015. Family Summer combines a family enrichment course, leisure, and outdoor adventures. Pilar and Guido have been married 25 years and have 6 children, ages 24 to 13. Originally from Argentina, they have made Houston their home for the past 24 years. After her lecture, Pilar will answer 2 or 3 questions from the audience. You can submit them via the question and answer button on your screen. Okay, we are ready to turn this over to Pilar.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for introducing me. I will start this lecture today by sharing my screen with you because I have a PowerPoint presentation. So hold on a second, Jane. You need to turn off your video. Good. You need to turn it off. Good. Thank you. All right. Okay, so I'm glad to be the second presenter in this series. All right. So the topic of this evening is Because I Want to, forming the will of our children. And yes, it is important to form the will of our children during a pandemic. In fact, it is a perfect time because we are asked to stay at home. All extracurricular activities, sports, etc. have been canceled, and life as we know it has changed. We have more time to spend with our family. A recent study that I received this week of the Institute for Family Studies states that one of the unforeseen outcomes of the quarantines is that teens spend more time with their parents than under normal circumstances. For all the difficult this presents, this appears to be a gift. However, we all know that it has brought many challenges at the same time. So it is important to ask ourselves, how are we taking advantage of these special times? A couple of years ago, I attended a lecture by Steve Markle, who developed a program called Families of Character, who said how he and his wife had attended a lecture by educator Jim Stenson when their kids were young, who spoke about the importance of educating in virtue. But life took over and they never did anything about it. In fact, they outsourced their parenting by sending their children to a great Catholic school and enrolling them in a wonderful sports program. But by the time they were in high school and some of them even in college already, they realized their big mistake. They had not formed the will of their children, and their children were lazy, selfish, and wanted to be entertained all the time. So I just suggest you pay attention. You don't want to say in 10 years, oh yes, I once attended a lecture via Zoom during the pandemic by Pilar Caranti, who spoke about this, and we didn't do anything about it. So this talk is the first of the parenting talks. The previous one was for couples about marriage. This one is the basis of the education of our children. The other topics I will mention in passing will be dealt in more depth in the next talks. So I believe that one of the causes of underage drinking, sex before marriage, the increase of anxiety, depression, and suicides in tweens and teens, addictions to social media, video games, pornography, and drugs, is the fact that the education of the will has not been our priority when raising our children, and that the environment has won over our children. This is a very important point that I think people miss out, and they think, well, I'm gonna take out the phones, I'm gonna move my kids' school, I'm gonna cut down the internet, I'm gonna move out, and get out in the wilderness so that none of these influences reach my kid. But this is not the idea. We can still live here in the middle of the world and, have good, happy, normal kids. So these statistics indicate us that the education of our children cannot be improvised. We need to educate with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey says in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful Families. And as psychologist Thomas Licona says, we must exercise intentional parenting. I guess that is why you are here listening to this webinar today, because an environment that can be counted on to support good character, like the one we live in now, means that parents, that us, have to be more intentional and vigilant than in past generations. Our job as parents is to do our best to use these opportunities we have to help our children grow in virtue. But remember, we have influence, but we don't control the outcome. We don't know how our children will turn out. Our children are free. In fact, we all are free. And the pressure from the postmodern philosophy that is imbued in our society is very powerful. This is a very vast topic that can be dealt from many, many perspectives, and we can spend here hours talking about this. I promise it will not be longer than 45 minutes. Today, I will talk about some general considerations, following by mentioning the importance of our example and why we need to personalize the education of each one of our children, how to form the will, how to foster virtues, and I will talk about 2 virtues that I think are vital to raise happy and mature adults: order and fortitude. I will give some key ideas and offer some practical points that I think would be helpful to you. However, all families are different, so not everything that I talk about here you'll be able to apply to your family with your circumstances and kids. Some of the examples come from my own family, and this is not to put myself as an example. I am here in the trenches with you, I assure you that, and far from perfect. In fact, when my son was in middle school, he said to me that he wasn't bothered by how much a teacher yelled because he was used to me. So you can imagine how I am. All right. So if I were in a lecture in front of you, I would be asking this question. Now I will ask and I will answer myself. So, but this is a question that you will have to think about also, okay? So we have to ask ourselves, what are the principal objectives in the education of our children? Think about it, okay? For most parents, the principal objective of the education of their children are that they get good grades, that they understand math, that they learn languages, etc. And as children grow up, parents are concerned about university degrees, professional qualifications, etc. The focus is on what they will do. In other words, knowledge is the goal, and knowing is an activity, is a result of the activity of the intellect. In order to know, one must want to know. It is through the will that a person wants. Wanting is an activity of the will. If wanting is accomplished, there will be no problem in knowing. If our children want to study and are habitually orderly, persevering, and responsible, one result will be good grades, a degree, etc. We have to focus more in what they will be than in what they will do. The end of the education of our children could be summarized in the attempt to awaken and continually reinforce in all and each one of our children the goal of being sincere, humble, responsible, persevering, prudent, orderly, pious, hardworking, obedient, loyal, and generous, and a big etc. So possessing a well-directed will helps us develop a strong self-esteem and self-confidence in our children by providing them with the ease and the energy to achieve the goals they aspire. Hopefully, what they set their minds to is to pursue the good that their intelligence acknowledges. Both a strong self-esteem and self-confidence are indispensable to navigate the digital world and the pressures of society in general. Intelligence is developed in the family setting, most intensely during the first years of life and of course at school. However, the will is formed basically in the heart of the family because values and virtues are formed during the course of family life. In the family, children are motivated by love because they feel loved for who they are. Love, trust, and gratitude favor the growth of virtues. So obviously, we parents are the ones who play a leading role in educating our children, and for this, our example is key. We as parents cannot demand from our children certain things to help them grow in virtue if we don't struggle to live the virtues ourselves in our own lives. The most important example that we parents can give to our children is that they see us struggling, becoming better persons ourselves. We have to struggle to be what we want our child to be. Kids are like copier machines, especially from 0 to 7 years old, and they pay attention to everyone, and especially to us. When my children were younger, little, I would say, I would be doing the dishes and be close. I, put the dishes in the dishwasher and would close the dishwasher with my foot so as not to bend down. And my kids, which were the perfect size to, short enough to close the dishwasher with their hands, they will, get their foot and close the dishwasher lid with their foot. So anyway, this is a silly example, but it shows how, those little details, little things that we do, they pick up and they say, okay, this is the way we close the dishwasher, and they close it like that. So we have to be very mindful of that they're like copier machines. So the absence of our example as parents, do as I say, but not as I do, is not an effective way of parenting. I know this dad that who loves motorcycles, and his wife, who is very practical, wouldn't allow him to get one. She said she didn't want to be left a widow with too many little kids or take care of a disabled man. So years passed, and one time in talking with his wife, he reflected, I think it was a good thing that I didn't get that motorcycle, although I still want one. It showed the kids how even if you want something very badly, it is not a bad thing to get a motorcycle. No? You don't give in to that whim. It sets the right example for the kids, and it really did. So remember, we don't have to be perfect parents to be good parents. When educating in virtue, we have to realize that the education of our children has to be personalized. We must remember that every person, every child is different, unique, and unrepeatable. Why? Because of the genetics, the temperament, the circumstances during gestation, being the first child, the second, the middle, the last, the character, the friends from school, the teachers, the books they read, the social media, and the wider culture. All these elements shape our being different. So each one of our children needs a personalized education, even if you have 2, 8, or 10 children. I'm sorry to tell you, if you have 10 children, you have to have a personalized education. Every child is one world, as the expression in Spanish goes. On since we are 11, she always said, kind of in her hair, pulling her hair more, she would say 11 words. She was very conscious of the fact that, each one of us was different and needed different things. Everyone is born with certain characteristics, some positive ones and some negative ones. Children can accept their weaknesses because they know that their parents and siblings love them for who they are. This is a stepping stone from which they can strive to improve and acquire the virtues presented to them. For this, it is important to know what virtues to foster and what defects to correct in each one. It is easier to maximize a strength than to correct a defect. And to correct a defect, you must maximize the corresponding virtue. If Joe is selfish, encourage him to be generous. If Mary is lazy, encourage her to work. If Tony is disorganized in his school, help him be organized with his toys. Our 2 younger children happen to be boys, and they couldn't be more different. But I always stress to them, one of them is, super kind, just a big heart, generous, just nice kid. But he's totally distracted. If you have to tell him something, I need to make sure he's looking at me, eye contact, one thing at a time, kind of in a loud voice so that he would, pay attention. And the other one, on the contrary, he is, very, I can tell him like 7 things at the same time. He has initiative. He can read my mind. He's like kind of the perfect last child that you would like because, he knows everything and I don't have to tell him. But he has a really bad temper. So I don't think he would like me to broadcast this, but anyhow, he has a bad temper, which he has been improving, I would say, because I emphasize to each one of them, okay, your kindness is not the problem, getting angry is not the problem, but you have to struggle in trying to pay more attention, have more initiative. And in you have to struggle to control your temperament and don't feel so proud because, I like that quality of yours of being so, attentive, okay? So we have to keep that in mind. So how do we form the will? This is the meat. Now we're getting into it. How do we form the will? By growing in virtue. And what is a virtue? A virtue is a good habit that improves the operation of the will and of the intelligence. These habits are acquired and perfected through the repetition of acts, which grant us the easiness to act in a certain way, like saying the truth in the case of sincerity or thinking of others in the case of generosity. One act only does not suppose virtue, nor some acts repeated randomly or in certain circumstances or without the use of our will. Virtue supposes a repetition of acts with purpose, knowing what is done and why it is done, and wanting to act like this in any circumstance and environment, whether others are present or not. And you acquire a habit by the demand of another person and also by self-demand. We, as parents, demand from our children certain things to help them grow in virtue. And though this may continue as they grow up, the idea is that they grow in virtue by self-demand because they want to be more orderly, more generous, or sincere. The goal is that they grow in virtue because they want to, because they truly choose to live that way. Well, we may think there are many virtues that we must foster and it's too difficult, but the principle of harmony of the virtues teaches us that when you improve in one virtue, the entire person improves, and thus indirectly, the other virtues also improve. Studies show that only 20% of a person's way of being is genetically determined. Therefore, our children are not born obedient, lazy, studious, fearful, generous, etc. We help them become, or they make themselves obedient, lazy, impatient, responsible. In a way, we are all born in potential. That is, that everyone is full of within. If the right condition exists, the virtues. That is why it is important to begin training a child in good habits at an early age, in part due to the neuroplasticity of the brain, and because once a bad habit sets in, it's more difficult to correct. But a word of caution, you may be so focused in fostering one of the virtues that you can get what psychologist Dr. Price calls the paradoxical response, which is to get the opposite effect of what we are trying to accomplish. For example, you may want to educate your children in temperance, in not being materialistic and not wanting every toy there is out there. So if we never buy them anything, if we always tell them no, if we don't allow them to drink a little bit of wine when they're 16 with the family, we may get a paradoxical response. When our children grow up, they may end up buying every toy, every single gadget there is out there. Or when they get to college, they get drunk all the time. All that effort you have put in educating them in virtue is not paying off. So why bother, you may ask? The key is to do it the right way. So if we form the will by growing in virtue, the next question is how we can foster virtues in our children. The British educator David Isaacs suggests the following. When children are young, educate in doing. Here I will talk about the virtue of order. And when they are older, educate in thinking. Here I will talk about fortitude. So let's talk about this in more detail. When children are young, educate in doing. What does it mean? It means to require them to do things. We have to make them good acts. You don't have to always reason things out with them, especially when they are young, but you must demand that they do what you have asked. You make them put away their toys, make their bed, eat all their food, even if they don't like it, tell the truth, stop watching TV right away, help at home, help in the yard, put on a jacket outside, and is where your authoritative parenting comes in. An authority that it is at the same time warm and supportive, as well as demanding. And we don't have to forget about the demanding part. There are two tips. Be very demanding in few things and not demand many things at the same time. We tend to do the opposite. We tend to demand many things at the same time, so half the things remain undone, and therefore we lose authority. And also, if you something that they cannot do, it is better not to demand it. You know, like asking your 7-year-old to fix a motorcycle or the pool equipment. You know, they cannot do that. You know, they can help, but they cannot do it. Or your 3-year-old to trim the bushes. That's not a good idea. Since children are young, it is important to get them used to the idea that doing things well, being good, is a prize in itself. It is the joy of having done something good. So for example, when you are working on the yard and doing something that is especially difficult, like removing the vines of a tree that are all the way up to the top, you work together with your child, and when you finish, you look up and you see what you have done and the way it was, you remember how it was and how it looks now. And you and your child are happy because you've accomplished something that was hard and now it looks much better. So that is the prize. You don't give him, money for having done that. So in order to educate your children well, we must habitually demand that they do their work well to the best of their abilities. This way, you are an intrinsic motivation in your kids. They believe they can do something good if they hard, practice, learn a new skill by getting over a challenge or a difficulty. They learn autonomy and accountability. And you stay connected with them. You give them a hug, a high five, you feel empathy. And consequently, they would do things they want to. If you give a material reward for doing what they should, you're not developing an intrinsic motivation, and they're not growing in virtue. This table has been taken from British educator David Isaac's books, Character Building. These are the virtues arranged according to age. It includes the cardinal virtues and the human virtues. As you see, happiness is the fruit of a life lived in accordance to virtue. I will be focusing on these two virtues that I mentioned, for order and fortitude. The virtue of order is more easily acquired between the age of 0 to 7. It not only includes material order, but it is, above all, order in the ideas, the intelligence, and order in the affections, which leads to self-control, a key quality. That is why it's so important and oftentimes neglected. Order is the virtue that is the foundation of the other virtues: temperance, sobriety, serenity. That's why I'm talking about it here. That is why also it is very important to start developing this virtue at a young age. Order provides security and serenity. It have more time, be more efficient, increase our performance, and achieve more easily our goals. It gives us more peace, trust, and security, avoids us disappointments and setbacks. It allows us to be happier with less effort. An environment of order is very important too, because in a home where the parents lead an orderly life, this order is transmitted almost without words. Until 7 years of age, what we will teach our children will be mostly material order, each thing in its place and a place for each thing. But this is only a first step. When he grows up, this habit, first acquired with the material things, will keep order in his mind and be more efficient in whatever he sets his mind to. We can ask ourselves, how do we live order in our homes? Are they in order or not? Sometimes there is disorder in our homes because, one, we have too many things, or sometimes there is no designated place for that thing. So you might want to think, how many things do you have, and if you have a place for each thing. Order in the toys with little kids. You have to put toys in different boxes so that they learn how to sort and classify. My husband, if I would this lecture live, he wouldn't interrupt. Maybe he's coming now, we'll see. But he likes to interrupt and give the following example, but I told him not to interrupt, so I will give the example myself. When my kids were little, and I tell them they had been playing, guys, start cleaning up because we're gonna have dinner, my husband will barge into the room and, start cleaning, putting the toys away himself. And I would tell him, no, don't do that. Don't do that. We're trying to teach children in virtue. We want them to learn how to sort and classify, It doesn't matter if, you know, they don't do it perfectly at the beginning, you know, and they mix Legos and dinosaurs, but we can show them how to do it. But his objective was to clean the room as fast as possible. And I used to tell him it's not a speed contest. So anyway, a child who habitually lives in chaos, where no one teaches him order, when he grows up, he will have more difficulty elaborating a structured report in his job, or even establish his own priorities in life. And I deal with a lot of women that struggle a lot in establishing their own priorities. And I often ask them, how do you keep order in your home? And I can, and I tell you, sometimes, you know, I do it via Skype or via Zoom, and I can see, I take a peek into their home. So I see, you know, and sometimes it helps me understand, you know, why I struggle with the priorities. When children are young, David Isaacs suggests the chain of events. That is, events that follow each other and are repeated daily, because it is easier to do things that are related to each other and not isolated. For example, the routine when you arrive from school to your home. You have to leave the backpack in the designated place, take out the lunchbox and clean it out, wash your hands and have a snack. My 16-year-old, I have to say, he's still struggling with this, and he cleans out his lunchbox in the morning, putting the food for that day. Anyway, that is the chain of events really works well with most children. You can establish a chain of events for the time when they wake up, for their bedtime, before and after they start eating, they start to play, etc. With this type of logical change, the kids respond to their basic needs with little effort and less risk of forgetting. And routine also provides security. The third point is order in the schedule. Things take place regularly and as planned. A small schedule facilitates order and the use of time. This basic schedule has to be limited to what you have to do regularly, more or less at the same time. You wake up, you eat, you sleep at a certain time. There's a time to study and a time to play and rest. There's a fixed place for dinner, and that dinner is a family activity and not in front of the TV. Although not so much in this pandemic, sports and technology, unfortunately, our family. For once, our kids don't know how to have a conversation, so we need to turn off the screens to be able to look at each other's eyes and converse during dinner. So I challenge you to have a daily technology-free family dinner. The fact that we have a schedule doesn't mean that we cannot be flexible and adapt to different circumstances. Cringe when I say schedule, but we have to be flexible. One of the problems nowadays is that kids get bored, so they turn to their phones and spend an average of 7 hours on their phones. If you don't believe me, you can watch the documentary Childhood 2.0 that has been released recently, and The Social Dilemma, which is another documentary drama that I recommend. But now we know that boredom fosters creativity and imagination. So things that we can include in the schedule are playing outside in the backyard, going to the park, you know, biking, hiking, shooting hoops, playing catch, watching birds. When my kids were little, I used to prepare dinner inside, and, you know, I have windows that overlooked to the backyard. So I remember them locking them out so that they couldn't come in, and they would play and, you know, foster their imagination, you know, come up with new things to play with, because otherwise, you know how it is. They enter every 3 seconds. Oh, I've got a boo-boo. Oh, so-and-so hit me, you know, I don't know what to do. I'm bored, but, closing the door allowed them to, develop creativity and sort out their problems that they would be having among themselves. Of course, if they were pulling their hairs or punching each other, I would step out, and I knew that there was something dangerous outside. I'm not suggesting you do it, but that's how I raise my kids. Also, have a summer schedule for when kids are out of school, or if they're doing online schooling right now, make sure they have a schedule so they don't wake up at 10 a.m. Okay, just set them a schedule. If we start fostering this virtue when they're young, when they're older, they will have internalized it and leave order in their rooms. They will know when to study and when to play, and they will do it if they want to. A friend of mine was telling me that a 1-year-old is so orderly and disciplined that he manages to fit in many things in a day. He exercises, he prays, he goes to mass, he studies the cello, he goes out with a friend, he reads 10 minutes of a history textbook that he enjoys, and then 10 minutes of Don Quixote, which is a classical thick Spanish novel, teaches himself how to play the guitar and many other things too numerous to name. But this kid was like, wow. It is very important to win the battle of order before adolescence kicks in, because in this stage, we will have to be more demanding in other aspects, and order being the foundation of the other virtues will be needed. So first, you educate your kids in doing, as I said, but gradually, when children are older, you educate in thinking. That is, you require them to think and internalize the values before making their own decisions. John needs to know why he has to do and act well and the consequences of doing it well. This knowledge moves him to want to do it. He needs to understand why he needs to renounce to comfort, why he needs to stop what he's doing to help his brother tie his shoe. In that way, he does it because he wants to, and not because his parents are telling him. Motives cannot be very elevated if they are 8 or 10, but again, the example of the parents is a key motivator. Peter must know why it is important for him to do his chores at home, and how the rest of the family suffers if he doesn't do them. Susie needs to know why it's good to help his younger brother with his homework, and how he's going to understand math and get a better grade in the test if she explains the concepts to him. Jack has to know why it is important to treat his date or girlfriend with respect, and what are the consequences of not doing so. And by knowing this, although he may be tempted differently because his peers do, he will do what is right. The other day, a friend was telling me that his son in high school was invited to a party at a house where the parents were out for the weekend and they were going to drink and use drugs, a very common scenario, unfortunately. The son mentioned this to his dad and he asked him, "Do you think it will be good for you to go?" And the son replied kind of hesitantly, "No, Dad, I think not. But really, my friend Tom said that if I go, I was a coward." And the dad answered, or questioned actually. He said, "Do you think it's cowardice to avoid something that can hurt you?" This dad was teaching his son to think by asking the right questions. Okay, so this is great, but my kids are already in college and they just won't listen to me, you might be thinking. They are lazy, selfish, and want to be entertained all the time. They are already addicted to their phones, social media, they get drunk, they have moved in with their girlfriend. It is true, the older they get, it is more difficult to educate in thinking. That's why it is important to start early. But it is important to maintain a loving relationship with them, reminding them, and also ourselves, that we value more who they are, as I said at the beginning, that we want their happiness, and anything that we suggest is because we want what is best for them, even if they haven't turned out as the way we have hoped for, that they messed up, remember, there is always hope. In fact, Steve Markle, whom I talked at the beginning, upon seeing how his kids had turned out, decided to embark in living the virtues in himself. His wife joined him. They created this program, Families of Character, and their kids began to see the transformation in their parents, and they began to ask for help. So there's always hope. David Isaacs suggests in this book, Character Building, he writes the following definition regarding fortitude. In situations which make it difficult to improve, courageous people resist harmful influences, withstand difficulties, and strive to act positively to overcome obstacles and undertake great deeds. Between 7 and 12 years old, it is the prime time to develop the virtue of fortitude. During this time, children can acquire this habit with more naturalness and takes it root more easily. To educate this virtue at this age, it is important to explain to them why it is important that they make their bed, mow the lawn, or put up with their thirst, as I just mentioned. To foster this virtue is key because we live in an area where material comfort, in an era of material comfort that puts physical and emotional safety as a #1 priority. And we are educating softy and wimpy kids that are lazy, selfish, and want to be entertained all the time. So how can we educate in fortitude? 3 ideas. We must make them do things that require effort, especially prolonged effort. It is better that they set up the table every day than for them spending one entire morning helping in the kitchen. That's why practicing a sport is a very good means to educate in fortitude, as well as playing an instrument that they need to practice every day. But the tendency is not to require any effort from our children and overprotect them from small failures. But we all know as adults that life is hard and fair and that they are going to face difficulties, obstacles, and setbacks. So we need to prepare them for life. Our role as parents is to be demanding with our children so that they become responsible. We have to correctly exercise our authority. And the next talk, Álvaro de Vicente will be talking about this in more detail. It also requires effort on our part. Sometimes it's just easier to do things ourselves. However, if we deprive them of opportunities that require effort, they will not develop as authentic persons and will enter into adolescence without a proper base to resist calmly the problems of this stage. Better than protecting them from suffering and setbacks is to accompany them and help them so that they can overcome all the challenges. Carol Dweck, the author of Mindset, says that effort is one of the 3 key aspects in the growth mentality or mindset, because effort allows kids or people in general to use their abilities to the fullest, and it increases them over time. And failures or setbacks are a natural part of learning. She says that praising children's intelligence harms them and puts them into a fixed mindset. We have to convey a new value system and ask, who had a fabulous struggle today? Angela Duckworth, in her book Grit, says that with effort, talent becomes skill, and effort makes skill productive. And Pilar Caranti says, if there is no effort, it is impossible to acquire virtues. So what things require effort? The first one that should come to mind are chores. Have your kids do big tasks that are simple and age appropriate. Other things that require effort and build fortitude, but may not be so fun, is make them mow the lawn or trim the ivy and the bushes, sweep the garage, walkway or patio, shovel the snow, power wash your outdoor furniture, wash the car, the house windows, walk the dog, take care of the pool. I mean, there's a big list and I'm sure you can come with more ideas. One time we were working in the yard with my children and I asked one of my sons, who maybe was 6 or 7, to cut the leaves of the sago palm, which is that small palm tree, and the leaves that were not coming in the right direction, that the ones that are coming from below, not from the top of the trunk. So I told them to cut them. And I guess I didn't explain myself correctly because I continued to do something else. And when I turned around and I looked, I saw a beautiful trunk. He had cut all the leaves of the sago palm. So anyway, you run certain risks when asking your children to do things that require effort, but they are worthwhile. Other fun things that require effort are go on hikes and bike rides, push their limits. Don't turn around at their first, I'm tired, I'm thirsty, I want to go home, I don't feel good. So one key aspect when educate in Fortitude and making them do things that require effort is to recognize and positively reinforce them when they have overcome something that has cost them effort, because it helps them to acquire this virtue. Related to number 1 is number 2, which is teach them delayed gratification. That is teaching them to resist their impulses, put up with thirst, hunger, heat, cold, tiredness, pain, a small inconvenience. Am I telling you to, starve your children to death? No, I'm not. I'm just telling you, don't take a snack with them everywhere you go. They can, not eat in between meals, for example. Things start when they are little, and when they are older, you explain to them what I just said. We don't have to give in to every whim. We have to give our kids what they need, not just what they want, as you have heard before. We don't have to be afraid to say no to our kids if what they want is not what they need. One thing is that this is very American, but I think you can skip the popcorn at the movies. They just don't need it. They'll survive. My kids survive without it. So, number 3, be countercultural. Also, this is something that makes them strong, is going against the current. But in order to go against the current, in order to be countercultural, you need to have a strong family culture. And what is exactly our family culture? Our family culture includes, our relationships. How do we talk to each other? How do we handle conflict? Our rules and routines, our beliefs and philosophies of life, the values and norms we expect each other to live by, our rituals and traditions. Thomas Licona, whom I mentioned earlier, says that to build a strong family culture, connective rituals are essential. They are the glue that holds families together. They give us a sense of belonging and identity. So be countercultural in the things they do and they do not do, in the things they have and do not have, in the way they dress. And here is where that explaining the why I mentioned earlier comes in. When my daughters were growing up, my husband would tell them that, okay, so-and-so, that dress is too short, or those pants are too tight. And he explained how they might think it's cute. It looks really nice on you and it's super cute, those pants that you're wearing or that skirt. But we men have an anatomical view and are attracted to those curves or those legs. And that what is important is that the boys look at your face, at your interior. You don't want them looking at other parts of your body. And they complained at first, and they came to me, and I thought also he was a little bit exaggerated, but he would tell me, no, Pilar, you need to realize women are different. And you know, this helped my daughters a lot. And they truly love their father because they realized that he cared for them. So they have a wonderful relationship. It didn't ruin the relationship, even though he was kind of a pest about that. Also being countercultural in the way, in what your kid does with their free time. What do everybody do, all the teenagers do, or twins or teens do in their free time? They play video games, or, they're on the phone, they're in some sort of technology, hooked up to some sort of technology. And we have to think, does he spend hours playing Fortnite or is on Instagram or Snapchat? It is important, instead of prohibiting them to do these things, to encourage them to do other activities instead. I would like to go into more detail, but this is part of another talk that I gave of educating in leisure, which is important. But remember this part: instead of prohibiting them, just encourage them or propose them other activities. Okay, let's go and play outside. Let's go for a bike ride. Offer some fun thing instead. Educating in fortitude is essential, because making our children strong will help them to not to fall into peer pressure in middle school, in high school and college. They will know how to behave. And in other words, they will behave well because they want to. I was talking with a teenage boy a few weeks ago, and he was telling me that he doesn't have any social media accounts because he realized that they were a waste of time and decided not to have them. He never created an account. And I was curious and asked him, but did your parents, tell you not to do it, or your mentor at school tell you not to do it? And he said, no, I just saw my friends and how much time they wasted on it. And no, and I don't want to, I decided not to do it. So I realized, well, this kid, he freely chose not to have them. He's doing this because he wants to, not to be attached to or addicted to technology, even if everybody else does, but he's a total normal teenager. Okay, summing up. To raise good and virtuous children, we must help our kids build a strong personal character based on virtuous habits: order, generosity, kindness, fortitude, respect, etc., as we just discussed, so they can do things because they want to. And second, build a strong family culture that promotes the education in virtue and character development, which brings out the best in all family members. A strong family culture is what helps our children withstand the pressures of the environment. I repeated this several times, so I hope you got it. As I said at the beginning, the will is formed basically in the heart of the family, because values are formed during the course of family. So obviously, we, the parents, are the ones who play a leading role in our children. If we start seeing that our kids have the room in order, are diligent and studious, are strong and stand up for what they believe, they do it because they want to, we are doing things well. The end of educating the will and the result is sons and daughters that have self-control. The self-control acquired with the growth in virtue makes us freer. So we are also educating them in freedom, which is very important. We should have an optimistic view of all this. An optimist is a person that discovers the positive in any situation and makes use of it. And he is also a realist. This is related to good humor, which is the humor that allows us to see the good. The good humor of the parents is what allows the parents to put the weight of the responsibility of their own life in the shoulders of their children without crushing them. Thank you. And now I will answer any questions that you might have. Okay. Here is the recommended bibliography that I will leave out here for a moment. Okay. I'm a choleric personality type. My parenting style is fast and quick, but I'm flexible with the child personality. I get most impatient with a phlegmatic personality type. Can you advise how to be more patient and understanding? Well, these are maybe struggles that last your lifetime. I can tell you because I am one of those persons, so I understand you perfectly. And it really, to mess up your children, you have to work really hard at it. And I'm sure you don't want to mess up your kids. You are doing the best you can. And I said at the beginning, your example is key. The fact that they see you struggle to be more patient and sometimes you don't succeed. When you don't succeed and you are impatient and you yell at them or you treat them badly, you ask for forgiveness. And that is a great example for the kids. Asking forgiveness, telling, I'm sorry, I am trying to control my temper and I lost it once again. I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. And you give a hug and you continue. That is what I suggest. The battle with, of being more patient and understanding, you'll have it all your life. But really, what you can do is, struggle, as I said, struggle to overcome it and ask for forgiveness. Let's see, my question pertains to the doing part. When your child, 7-year-old, wants to do more than you, the parent think they are capable of doing, like using knives to cut the vegetables or cooking, etc. How do you deal with that? Well, I am not a fan of doing of asking our kids the things that they cannot do. Other parents, they, because I've heard it in other talks, they have their 3-year-old chop those carrots. And for me, I've never done it. I never had my children, when they were little, clean the bathrooms. I mean, I would rather not clean the mess that they did, so I would do it myself. So you have to think, you have to look for activities that they can do by themselves, okay? By themselves, that are not dangerous and that they can, even though if they insist, maybe don't give them the carrot, but you give them a less sharp knife and you give them another vegetable to cut, okay? But remember that growing in virtue is not giving them also oh, I want to, chop the carrots and tomorrow I want to do something else. And it has to be an activity that is repeated over time. That's what I was focusing on. Okay, so maybe your job will be chopping the carrots every day. I mean, or every time we eat carrots, because you don't eat carrots every day. So find things that they do, more frequently, okay? And show them, okay, no, we're not going to do the carrots today, but I want you to do, take out the trash for me every day. Go and get the trash from every single room and put it in this bigger basket. Okay, that's something that they can do every day. Maybe change the activity that they want to do for another one that you think it's more suitable for them. Okay, I hope I have answered your question. What do you advise if your spouse isn't on board of this? For example, he's okay letting our daughter have a phone sooner than I am comfortable for her. He often indulges the kids, has a TV on when he's home, etc. So yeah, the idea is that you are on this, both spouses are on the same page, okay? That is fundamental, because otherwise the kids feel, the difference. So that is something that you have to talk it over with your spouse. If you want, you can watch the talk about solving conflict in marriage. And this is a type of conflict, and it's kind of a perpetual conflict studied by Gottman, because, it's something that comes over and over again. He wants to give her a phone right now, or now is the phone, and then buy her more clothes or giving more toys for Christmas, indulging her all the time. So this is something that is recurrent. So it's what John Gottman's called perpetual problem. So I advise you to watch the previous lecture that has how to solve those conflicts, or get the book of John Gottman about solving conflict in marriage, but it's not called like that. It escapes me at this moment. The 7 Habits to Making Marriage Work. So, you know, getting in the same page is fundamental. And you both will have to, you know, give in at something or another in order to you know, be in agreement. The kids need to see that you're both in agreement in their education. And one other word of advice would be, if you're not in agreement, never contradict each other in front of your children. As much as possible, try to have this conversation, these discussions, you know, behind closed doors and not in front of them, because that is even worse. Okay. All right, Madison, that was from you. If you would like to contact me and we can talk about this later, okay? What was the name of the author of the book of Mindset you mentioned? Mindset is Carol Dweck, and Angela Duckworth is the author of Grit. How to address the being different, not having a phone or a social media account. They understand it, but they're kind of left out when all their peers have it, and all they do is talk about it. Yes, it's very difficult to do that. You'll have to see what age your child is. You know, the kids are getting phones sooner and sooner and sooner. I advise you not to get them a phone. I would say, depending on the circumstances, we have given our phones to our children, to some in middle school and to others when they started high school. The reason being is that the ones that didn't have a phone until high school is because they went to a school that we really know, trust, is nearby. It's not a public school, it's a private school, and the kids don't need a phone there. Everybody is on the same page. There are some kids that do have a phone, but they're not allowed to take it to the school. So they don't feel different there. However, my other kids, when they started middle school, I'm talking about my older kids that are now, you know, 24. So when he started middle school, he had a phone that he shared with his daughter, with his sister, okay? And they would share the phone, they would never use it. But then when my fourth daughter went to, my fourth child, my daughter went to high school, went to middle school, that had completely changed. Everyone in her class, you know, had an iPhone, not even, so a smartphone, not even you know, it was like the top of the top. Okay, they had better phones than myself, but she was very. We talked about it, and she said, I remember her telling him, "Mom, I don't think I want a phone because I'm not sure I will be able to control it," she said to me. So maybe you can use this example to her. Ask her, would you be able to control it, to take care of you know, of the use of time? Why do you want it? You know, maybe. So my daughter, you know, she settled with a flip phone at that time when everybody else was having, you know, an iPhone. And that going against the current is what made her strong. And when she was ready, she said, "Mom, I think I'm ready for a phone." And she bought it with her own money, for example. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay, can you show the slide that listed the virtues and the age they should be acquired? Okay, I can go back because I didn't